Hello and welcome, everyone. So excited to have you here today for our WCS Book Club. Today, we will be discussing Speed and Scale, an action plan for solving our climate crisis now, by author John Doerr. A little bit about our agenda. We'll be doing introductions, housekeeping rules, then we'll go into a book summary and insights from our moderator, Natalie. A breakout room session one, regroup and share, then breakout session number two, regroup and share, and then a thank you and wrap up. A little bit about WCS. We are a community that fosters an influential network of professionals to further the roles of women in the growing green and blue economy and making a positive impact on the environment. We offer monthly events in person and virtual, annual mentorship programs, our new entrepreneurship circle, which will be hosting events in June and August for our e-circle, so make sure to check us out, as well as our WCS Talks TED Style Talk annual conference, which will be later this year. Our upcoming events that you can mark your calendars with are April 27th and May 4th, our Executive Leadership Workshop on Skill Building with Pam Samarco. Please make sure to attend based off of your region. This will be a lively discussion. May 18th, my USGBC conference and expo in Los Angeles. If you're there, please stop by. We'll have some WCS representatives. May 18th, our spring social happy hour. June 3rd, our WCS cleanup day, and June 9th, our WCS pitch competition. We do have virtual events one Thursday a month and in-person happy hours every other month. Get updated from our newsletter. Well, join our book club meetings. Today is Speed and Scale, but July 13th will be Venture Deals, and on October 19th, we'll be discussing braiding sweetgrass. Some Zoom etiquette here and virtual networking tips. Remember to unmute and mute yourself appropriately. Share your video if you can, and write your full name so people can connect with you on LinkedIn. Share your LinkedIn profile in the chat. We're all here to network and get to know each other. Please be respectful of each other and assume best intentions. Be present, be an active listener, and take away insights and leave judgment behind. We offer membership. Feel free to scan our QR code here, and we hope that you think about joining us as a virtual member or chapter member. Today's moderator, so excited to introduce this beautiful soul, Natalie Zandt, founder and CEO of Meter Leader. Natalie is the founder and CEO of Meter Leader, a web platform that gamifies saving energy at home using real-time utility data and behavioral science. Prior to starting Meter Data, Natalie worked as an energy efficiency consultant for over 6 years, implementing energy efficiency programs from utilities in California and Maryland. Natalie is passionate about combining her interests in technology, UX design, and behavioral science in order to positively impact the environment. And her spare time, she enjoys reading science fiction, drawing, and hanging out at the beach. Please welcome Natalie.
Thanks, Kirpa, for that introduction, and thank you all for being here today. If you haven't been to one of our book club events in the past, normally we like to do a brief overview and summary of the book, especially for those people who may not have finished the book or may not have read it. And then we like to engage in discussion in our breakout sections. So with that, I'll get started. So John Doerr is the author of Speed and Scale. He is an American investor and venture capitalist at Kleiner Perkins. Previously, he worked at Intel and co-founded 2 companies. He wrote the book Measure What Matters after his experience working at Intel made him realize that it doesn't matter what you know, it's execution that matters most. And so John Doerr wrote Speed and Scale after becoming interested in climate change, and really his interest came from his children. And so he started doing a lot of reading. And as he was reading all of these books and papers, he really asked himself, you know, what's the focused, actionable, measurable plan that can actually stave off this looming disaster? And he couldn't readily find a clear and concise plan related to tackling climate change. Next. So if you think that climate change is too huge or complex a problem for a clear plan, think again. In March 1942, 3 months after Pearl Harbor, FDR met at the White House with the commanding general of the US Army Forces. And that meeting agenda had one item on it. It was Roosevelt's plan to win World War II. And he sketched out a 3-point plan, which you see here on this image of the napkin. And his 3-point plan was to hold 4 territories, attack Japan, and defeat the Nazis in occupied France. And you know, this was how they were able to win World War II. And so climate change is just as huge and complex of a problem. And we really do need a clear, concise plan as to how this is going to be tackled. And so John Doerr took his experience from Intel, and it was there that Andy Grove invented OKRs, which stand for objectives and key results. And they really address the what and the how. Objectives are simply what you aim to accomplish, and they are significant, action-oriented, durable, and inspirational. And then the key results tell us how we'll get the objectives done. Strong key results are specific, time-bound, aggressive, yet realistic, and most of all, measurable and verifiable. They enable us to track our progress as we go. OKRs are a great project management methodology to use. Next, Kirpa. Great. So Speed and Scale's top line OKR is to reach net zero emissions by 2050 and to get halfway there by 2030. So Speed and Scale book has aligned its key results with the most ambitious target, a warming of no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. The first 6 items sort of on that napkin support the top line objective, which is to solve the climate crisis by getting to net zero no later than 2050. And then beneath them are a set of accelerants to speed up the pace of climate action. And overall, these OKRs abide by 3 main strategies, which is to cut emissions, conserve, which is getting more efficient, and to remove carbon. So basically cleaning up what's left. And the other image here on the right is just a great breakdown of the 6 main objectives and how they relate to the 59 total gigatons of carbon, global carbon emissions, and how we're going to get down to net zero. So I think this is a great visual, and it really helps us understand how each of the 6 objectives align to exactly getting down to net zero. Okay, next. So the first OKR is to electrify transportation. And so that means switching from gasoline and diesel engines to fleets of plug-in electric bikes, cars, trucks, and buses. And so here he lays out 6 separate key results. The first one being EVs achieve price and performance parity with new combustion engine vehicles in the US by 2024 and in India and China by 2030. And so as you can see on the right, and these screenshots are taken from the book's website. And so you can see here that this key result is actually currently off course. The average price of EV is at $61,000. This is as of December 2022, while the average price of a full-size car is $48,000. So, this key result is off track. There's, still much progress needs to be made here. The second one is that 1 of 2 new personal vehicles purchased worldwide are EVs by 2030 and 95% by 2040. So this one is making progress. The EV share of global auto sales grew slightly from 8% to 10% in 2022. And we know that certain countries are making a lot more headway than others. For example, Norway is already at 75% EV market share for new car sales. China has passed 5% to become the largest EV market in unit sales. And the US is currently at 2%. But I will say 19% of all new cars sold in California in 2022 were EVs. And 40% of EVs sold in the US are sold in California. So as you can see there, making limited progress, we're making some progress in that area. And then the other key results here are related to all new buses are electric by 2025. 30% of medium and heavy trucks purchased are zero emission vehicles by 2030, 95% of trucks by 2045. And then in terms of miles, 50% of miles driven globally are electric by 2040 and 95% by 2050. So you can see that this one in particular is off course, that EV global share of miles driven is still at 7.2%. I'm not going to read all of these, and hopefully if you did read the book, you did read through these. And you know, there's on the website, they actually have a great poster that you can download that has all of these different key results. But as you can see, in terms of electrifying transportation, you can see that we're mostly off course, but we are making some progress with in regards to the purchase of new EVs as well as buses and trucks. And in the book, there's a great section on the company Proterra, which is a company making electric buses. So I found that very inspirational sort of throughout the book, that he gives examples on different companies. Okay, you can go to the next slide, Kirpa. Okay, decarbonizing the grid. So decarbonizing the grid just means replacing fossil fuels with solar, wind, and other zero emission sources. So I'm just going to pick, one of these to sort of speak to a little bit. Key result 2.1 is the zero emission electricity sources to exceed 50% of global power by 2025 and 90% by 2035. And this one has strong momentum. So it's listed as in the green, which is great because there's not too many of these in the green key results. And it says that global market share of zero emissions electricity is currently at 39%, but that does look like outdated as of 2020. So would love to see that like updated statistic. But in this section, the author talks about being agnostic as to which carbon technologies are deployed and emphasizes that each country and state will chart its own path using clean energy technologies based on its geographic advantages. So in the US, the Southwest is dry and sunny, perfect for solar, while in the middle of the country, it's windy, perfect for wind turbines. And then you have countries like Iceland, who are especially lucky, and they get virtually all of their power from geothermal and hydro. In this section, they also did a great spotlight on the CEO of Sunrun, Lynn Jurjic. So that is a great story there. She kind of bet on this new residential financing model for residential solar and created a wildly successful company, and also was pregnant at 35, which coincided exactly with Sunrun's IPO. So I thought that was pretty inspirational for a clean energy company. I'll just note, we have a couple here that are also going strong. So solar and wind. Solar and wind are cheaper to build and operate than emitting sources in all countries by 2025. And then we have a few here that are in the code red. So really off course. Probably even, code red means these definitely need to change as fast as possible. And so you can see here that no new coal or gas plants from 2023 on, existing plants to retire or zero out emissions by 2025 for coal and by 2035 for gas. And it says here that now under construction globally, 345 coal-fired units and 438 gas plant units. That is actually, one that was really surprising to me. I guess here in the US, we hear that, coal plants are being phased out, but, that's not the case globally. So it's really great to have all of these key results and sort of the updates as to where we are in the progress towards these goals. Okay, I think we can go on to the next one. Fixing food just means restoring our carbon-rich topsoil, adopting better fertilization practices, motivating consumers to eat more lower emission proteins and less beef, and reducing food waste. And so key result 3.1 talks about improving soil health through practices that increase carbon content in topsoils to a minimum of 3%. It currently states that we're off course in this area and that 1.4% average carbon content of farm soils in the US. And so just so to give a flavor of what these types of practices are, so regenerative agriculture is a coordinated set of farming and grazing practices that enhance the soil's ability to retain carbon. It limits traditional plowing and tilling, and it also kind of avoids using pesticides by using crop covers to nourish the soil and guard against weeds. Those are just two elements of it, but there are a whole set of processes that help soil retain more carbon. The other one I'll just note, as you can see here, 3.3, promote lower emission proteins, cutting annual consumption of beef and dairy 25% by 2030, 50% by 2050. We are not kind of meeting this goal at all. And we're currently, US per capita weekly consumption is 1.1 pounds of beef and 3.8 pounds of dairy. One thing I was surprised to learn here is that research from Johns Hopkins University concluded that a 2/3 vegan diet, restricting meat and dairy to a maximum of 1 serving apiece per day, would cut livestock emissions by as much as 60%. And so I think that's a great stat that I wrote down for myself, because not everyone is going to go vegan. And so if we can give people a goal of restricting meat and dairy to a 1 serving a piece per day, that can still yield significant carbon emission reductions. And then the other large kind of emitter from this section that I learned about was cheese, cheese being the 3rd highest emitting food item after beef and lamb. And so in global sales, the big cheese is mozzarella. It takes 10 pounds of dairy milk to produce 1 pound of mozzarella. And 15% of total milk sales in the country now come from plant-based sources, but where we still haven't really solved the issue is cheese. We don't have as many good alternatives there. Okay, next. The 4th objective is to protect nature, and this refers to interventions and protections for forest, soil, and oceans so that they can remain carbon sinks. And so the one I'll point out here is 4.1, achieve net zero deforestation by 2030 and end destructive practices and logging in primary forests. Currently, the world is not doing great in this section. 3.75 million hectares of primary forest is lost annually. And in the book, John Doerr recommends that more funding is needed for high quality protection efforts, greater transparency to validate different types of offset programs, and improved satellite data and certification programs are critical as well as financial incentives to prevent people from actually cutting down forests and making sure that this is enforced with legal protections. Okay, next. The fifth objective relates to manufacturing, and particularly cement and steel must sharply lower their carbon emissions. So here I'll note that for key result 5.1, steel must reduce total carbon intensity of steel production 50% by 2030 and 90% by 2040. Right now, this is in the code red, so 1.9 tons of CO2 emitted per 1 ton of steel produced. So, you know, this steel and cement kind of are big emitters of carbon. And if we want to get on track related to steel, we must meet 3 criteria. The furnaces used to make steel must be powered by zero emission source. The iron going into the furnace must either be produced without fossil fuels or replaced with scrap steel. And lastly, the heating step before rolling out steel needs to be conducted with green hydrogen or some other clean fuel energy source. Okay, next. Great. The sixth objective is removing carbon, which means we must remove carbon from the atmosphere and store it for the long term using both natural and engineered solutions. In terms of engineered in terms of nature-based removal, you see here that the goal is to remove at least 1 gigaton per year by 2025, 3 gigatons by 2030, and 5 gigatons by 2040. We're currently off course in this area, and 1.3 million metric tons of nature-based carbon removal currently being tracked. One interesting thing I found in this chapter was that companies are really paving the way for carbon removal in that they are creating markets for these services. So for example, Stripe Climate makes it easy for any business to direct a small fraction of its revenue to purchasing carbon removal at an average price per ton of more than $500. Stripe is buying carbon removal from early stage companies, often as their very first customer. And so this is why it's important that companies are committing to their net zero commitments and really driving these carbon removal markets. Okay, next. Okay, so now we're moving on to the accelerants. So these are areas that will help push the 6 objectives that we just covered forward. Here, as it relates to winning politics and policy, this is important. It's important for countries to make national commitments for zero emission electricity, rebates for transportation, zero emission standards for all new buildings, carbon accounting related to carbon emission labels on all consumer goods, controlling leaks of natural gas, and eliminating fossil fuel subsidies. I think the big one here is subsidies, 7.2. Fossil fuels receive $296 billion in annual direct subsidies and $5.2 trillion in indirect subsidies. So that's nearly 6.5% of global GDP. And if we could repurpose those subsidies into energy efficiency and a clean energy transition, that would be a huge win. Okay, next. The next one is called turning movements into action. We know that leaders respond to pressure, and pressure is created by movements. But movements are built by many thousands of individuals. A perfect example is Greta Thunberg, who at 15 years old started skipping school to strike for the planet. She has since garnered, in 2019, 4 million people across the world to join her in the largest environmental demonstration ever. So, what starts off as really being small can really take on a new dimension. Next. Okay, I'm going to go quickly through these last couple slides. Innovation. Here in this section, the author talks about how the US has about half of the entire globe's innovation power, and we really owe it to the world to use that power to reduce green premiums and enable developing countries to adopt affordable technologies. In these key results, he kind of highlights where he thinks specifically innovation is much needed. So in 9.1, you see that batteries produce 10,000 gigawatt hours of batteries yearly at less than $80 per kilowatt hour by 2035. And so this one looks to be in the green, and this is on track. So that's great news. Okay, next. Okay, and then the last objective is invest. The one thing I liked key result 10.5, philanthropic investing, increased philanthropic dollars from 10 billion to 30 billion per year. And we're making limited progress here. I was surprised to find out that philanthropic giving totaled $730 billion in 2019, but the portion aimed at the climate crisis was less than 2%. Foundations make the bulk of their donations to healthcare and education because it seems to donors that climate solutions are less people-oriented, and because donors assume governments or markets would solve these problems. But the reality is that philanthropists can take risks that governments and companies can't. And philanthropy can get things started. They can help prove out solutions, and then governments and markets can help scale those things up. Next. Great. So that is, I hope that was a really quick overview of the book, and I hope that was helpful for those that may have not finished or read the book. And now we can jump into our breakout session. So in breakout 1, okay, I guess we'll be going over those 3 questions in our breakout session.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you guys had some lively discussions in your breakout rooms from breakout room 1 to breakout room 2. We're now here to regroup and share. So who would like to go in and sort of go over questions 1 from breakout room 1? Anyone from either of the breakout rooms? Don't you all raise your hands at once. Don't you dare. No, I'm just kidding. Who here would like to go first?
I think Natalie's going to share on our breakout room, but I did just want to say that it was really, really nice to hear across the board that like we all deeply care for the environment, but we're all struggling in our own ways in like doing the things that we know we're supposed to do, like becoming vegan, for example. So it's just been, it was nice to just have that moment of like, we're on board with this, we're trying, we're going to get there eventually, but like, it was a nice moment of solidarity.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Ambika. That means a lot. All right, Natalie, well, why don't you take the reins and share what your breakout room
Yeah, thanks, Ambika. Actually, that was a great, like, we bonded over cheese and kind of this sadness around realizing that cheese requires so much milk. And yeah, so we were kind of talking about that it's difficult to sometimes see objectives and key results around consumption related to meat and dairy. We did talk about how it's nice to see that they didn't say, hey, you have to fully go vegan. Like there was kind of this sort of goal that they set out. And I had it on my slide, but it was something like, 1 serving per day. But it's still difficult to wrap your brain around that because it's like, oh, only 1 glass of milk. So yeah, we kind of bonded over that. And then we all really enjoyed being able to wrap our brains around this complex topic and having this kind of 10-point plan. So I think a lot of us came or have backgrounds in project management or product management. And so I think we all really appreciated the way that he clearly breaks down the plan. Yeah, so I think that's about it.
Anyone else want to share from the other breakout room? Would love to hear your insights, what you guys gained, what you guys talked about.
I guess I can speak. We didn't stay on the questions. we just had a wonderful I thought it was a wonderful conversation of just whatever like questions came up, and we kind of like, I guess, started with what did you like, but at the same it was what we each kind of got from it and our own experiences, and we just kind of went with it and just kind of let it flow. And that was I really enjoyed it, and I certainly got a lot out of it.
That's amazing to hear. You know, that's why we're here for a book club.
And to everyone's point on food, I shared with our breakout room where I was inspired and I decided to try some coconut milk yogurt as opposed to cow's milk yogurt. But the problem I came across was I really like Greek yogurt because it has a high protein content, and the coconut milk has like no protein.
Yeah, definitely can relate to that. And I don't know what, this exact solution, but yeah, probably balancing different proteins and getting proteins from different places.
Eat more beans.
Beans.
Eat more beans.
I do that. I do those for lunch. I have my little bean bowls, but you still need enough protein.
Only 2/3 vegan. Just aim for that,
Imperfect environmentalists. That's what I go for. You try your best in what you can do and what you have around you, right? Cool. Any insights from the questions from breakout room number 2? Would love to do a deeper dive. Either of the rooms, unmute yourself. Would love to hear about your guys' discussion. Welcome back, folks. How was your lively discussion for breakout session number 2? Would love to hear from people from either breakout rooms. Feel free to unmute yourself and let's keep the lovely discussion flowing. Not all at once, folks, Anyone.
We talked about there being things missing, like circular economy. So some of the things that, because it was written by, a venture capital guy, like these are markets where there's economic investment opportunities, right? And that some of the things that are on a smaller scale that are really good that we really need, either if there's a startup or a business or an organization that's going in one direction, it'll usually change because they need to get funding, and in order to get that, like they need to address this market over here a little bit, and that capitalism is great, but it can also be a distraction sometimes. I think circular economy is definitely missing. Like that's something that I think a lot about in my personal life. I'm seeing some companies pop up that, do it on a corporate level, like Reaply or HEAPLY, which is a super cool organization, or like Liquidonate, who are trying to do circular economy stuff. But yeah, I think there are some things that are, and I think it's honestly because they're not going to have as much impact. But the challenging thing is they're more accessible for individuals to make changes in their lives. So it's a double-edged sword.
Thank you so much for sharing, Darcy, and great to see you here today. Anyone else like to share from the other breakout room? We're all ears here. Should I call on someone? I don't want to.
Well,
Heather.
yeah, I will step up. I think we were talking about the influence of policy and lawmaking, as well as the influence of the market, and kind of the pressures that are brought to bear. I think that was the bulk of our conversation. And yeah, and the ups and downs that come with the different administrations. So I think that's a pretty good summary. You guys can, the rest of my group members can check me on that.
Anyone else want to pipe in? Thank you so much, Heather. And thank you for the thumbs up, Dan.
I'll say that summed it up pretty well. I think we started talking about policy regulation, how important is that, how critical it is to get any of these initiatives, technologies to a point where it's meaningful, it's moving the needle, and we kind of we're talking about how that goes through ebbs and flows, and how economics continues to play a critical role in bringing these to market, and until incentive subsidies tied to it, you're always working under, there's always this little bit of an ambiguity that is associated with what's going to happen when the next administration comes in. And that was the bulk of our conversation there this time around. We also started to look at the book at one of these, at least what I found was, it's page 171 for everyone who has the book. I have a Kindle. I got to chapter 7, but there was a table there that talked about all of these different policies that exist. And when you look at the different countries and how they're working towards getting to those policies, I think Savannah made the point that it's really interesting that so many countries, well, you kind of think of it, but it's so interesting to see them listed as there is no policy. Oh, we're just doing this. And you're like, well, that's not enough. Or there's a huge disparity between the top 5 countries with just their approach to things, and having it laid out in that table is just, it hits you differently.
Yeah, I think I need to get a copy of the physical book, because I'm an audiobook girl all the way, but this is one of those where you're like, please refer to PDF, this or that. And I'm like, I also, I for the same reason I bought the Carbon Almanac. I don't know if y'all have read that, but like I heard that was a very like visually designed book, and it absolutely is. So yeah, I need to get the physical book.
I have a Kindle, so I'm kind of trying to look at it on
Or the
here.
Kindle.
I'm like,
yeah.
Well, it's actually not very good. So I should also get the book.
Yeah.
This is, it's really hard to kind of like read tables on here.
Yeah, I did audiobook through my library, and now I'm like, Although I will say their website is very good, the Speed and Scale website.
It definitely is. I don't know about y'all, but the administration question, absolutely. Because I remember when Trump was president and it was like, nah, on the Paris Agreement. And I was like, hearing something about it the other day, and I was like, we're part of that, right? Like, and I just had to go Google it again. I'm like, okay, so, one administration says, nope, we're not doing that. And the next is like, yeah, we are. And then let me just like pass this huge funding bill. So that's really frustrating. That's like every 4 years.
Yeah. I was actually doing work with demand response with utilities right when the administrations were changing, and people had backup generators, diesel generators, and the Obama administration had very clearly put caps and limits on how many hours you can run them in a year. And there was news coming out of DC that with the new administration, that number is going to go up. So there were a lot of individual demand response companies who's like, oh, we can play this more on the market and arbitrage some more. But on the other hand, you're like, ooh, we should not be doing that. So I remember working through that and having all of these different, you live in a world where you get so many different types of inputs, and trying to reconcile all of that was frustrating and hard, and just an experience.
Kirpa, can I share one more thing? I know we're almost out of time.
Absolutely, Natalie, and thank you so much for everyone for your lively discussion. It's just so exciting to see all your faces here for the book club, and we hope that it grows. So Natalie, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, well, just one quick thing that I didn't get to share in my group that I wanted to really badly. One of the rabbit holes that I went down while reading this book was kelp farming. I read about it and was like, wow, like I don't know much about this. Like I want to learn more. So I listened to a podcast and listened to another podcast and I came across this company. I'll put in the link. It's called Atlantic Sea Farms, and it's based out of Maine. I hope I got the right one. And they're growing kelp. And, you know, kelp is able to pull carbon dioxide from the water. And it's also just a very healthy, it's one of the most nutrients dense foods that you can eat. And so this company now produces, you know, harvesting a bunch of seaweed, and they're creating seaweed cubes that you can put in your smoothies, and also seaweed, like fermented seaweed salad and fermented seaweed kimchi. And I am just dying to try it. And also, yeah, maybe a kelp farmer in the future. Yeah, definitely if anyone's looking for a rabbit hole to go down, I would recommend listening to some kelp farming podcasts, because it, to me, that's like, just seems like a no-brainer. Like it seems, you know, relatively easy kind of, so yeah, there must be a catch. Like why aren't we doing this on mass scale? Or maybe
Right.
it's just takes time, you know, finding a market for these seaweed products that Americans traditionally are not used to eating. So anyway,
Yeah, I would say
that's-
people are probably like, oh, seaweed, but I just made a sushi bake. Lots of recipes on TikTok if you're interested.
Oh.
A sushi bake, and you get I forget what it's called. Is it nori? Is that what they call seaweed? But it's baked nori, and you just like scoop it up and put it on there and eat it.
Wow, I'm
Pretty
gonna
amazing.
research that.
But most Americans are not trying to do that, right? Like I'm sure, like if my parents, they're coming down this weekend, and if I showed that to them, they'd be like, no thanks, I'm fine. I'm like, yeah, but you'll eat the thing that looks kind of like it at like the Golden Corral. So like, I just added furikake on it, you know, which is seaweed, right?
I
love that.
actually love how many recipes they have on their website. Like there's so much you can do with seaweed.
Yeah, who knew? Or I didn't know, but now I know.
Thanks for that rabbit hole, because now I'm about
Yeah.
to fall down it like Alice in Wonderland. So
Yeah, there's a great podcast. I don't have the link, but it's with a woman in Maine who talks about how she's educating lobster fishermen in Maine, because in their off season they can become kelp farmers because they're not lobster fishing during that season. So very fascinating stuff happening all around the world.
I'm with you if you want to move to Maine and start you know, a kelp.
I know.
I'm with you.
You start a kelp farm. You start.
That's the new thing. Everyone wants to start a kelp farm.
Thank you so much for sharing, Natalie. I just want to say to everyone here who was able to participate in tonight's book club, appreciate your time, appreciate your energy, and we're so excited to have you for our next event. I will share, I know we're over time, but would love to just sort of share the last few slides. You know, our next book is Venture Deals. So come to our next book club on July 13th for another lively discussion. And just a recap of our upcoming events: April 27th for our West Coast folks and May 4th for our East Coast folks. We'll be having an executive leadership workshop on skill building with Pam, one of our board members. May 18th, if you're at my USGBC conference and expo in Los Angeles, come say hi. WCS is going to be there, so we'd love to see your face. May 18th, we have our spring social and happy hour. June 3rd, we have our WCS cleanup day. June 9th, our WCS pitch competition. And please check out our merch store. It's had a bit of a facelift, and we have some great things that you might want to cop and represent our community. So feel free to scan the QR code to check out what we have to offer. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. You know, this event would not have been possible without our lovely volunteers. So thank you so much, Natalie, for organizing this event, Joey for just being here as support and directing everything, Tracy for marketing event details, and our lovely volunteers here who have been able to make sure that this event was be able to run possible. So thank you so much, everyone. Join us on in the virtual world, and we look forward to next time. Thank you so much and take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.